in October Adam, Main Tim, BNEI Israel. My name is Zvi Agranat, CRNVT. I am conducting an interview with Rafael Hanin in Givatayim, Israel. What's your answer, please? My name is Rafael Hanin. YRFALHNYN, Sufi. What is your date of birth? Date of birth March 1st, 1929. Does that mean that today you are between 66 years old? In what city were you born? I was born in Vilna. FJLNA, country of birth? Country of birth is complicated. When I was born it was Poland. Before that it was Lithuania. Then it was Russia, and now once again Lithuania. What do people call you today, Israel? Rafi wants to know the life and the family before the war and the nature of the city where you grew up. So would you like the place to show me the family you came home to? I grew up in Wilma. In my house, in my grandfather's house. Nathanson, who was a well-known and famous figure in the city. It was a very respectable family. He was in business, he had a carpentry factory. In addition to this, he had the largest store, the Galanteria, in the most central place in the city. And in addition to that, he was engaged in Torah study a lot. I only remember him as a little boy. Maybe until the age of 5. So he passed away. But I know he was the head of a telegraph suit. With rabbis in all kinds of places in the world regarding the Torah. I mean, there was a man. Study. And trade and rich. They had 9 daughters and 2 brothers. And 2 sons. And we lived in the city center. They lived in a penthouse. Or an upper floor apartment, very large. The grandfather, and the grandmother with the children were there. There was a huge dining room and an even bigger library. Seders were held there during Passover. And for other reasons. As a small boy I once counted how many people sat around the table. I reached very nearly 100. How many of them survived? 4. Out of all those who sat there. Namely my father, my sister, myself. And 1 cousin. Shemesh, who lives today in Holon. There were many rooms. And there was such a practice that the one who got married, from among the girls, would accept room and lived for the first time at least in this room. I remember it more as maybe said like a kibbutz than a house, because we were a lot of children. What kind of children were you? There were 3 of us at the time, but there were also the other uncles. For example, when there was rubella. So they made us a red room there and there was great joy, we all found out very well. My grandfather was religious. Except for him, in his family, no one was religious. My grandfather built a synagogue for carpenters with his own money. In Vilna it was customary to have a synagogue for carpenters for all kinds of trades. And he built a synagogue for carpenters. And then he had to appoint a collector from the family. He couldn't find one, because they were all. There was no one religious. So he chose my father, as he was more traditional than his sons. And from the immediate family. It's about the family. The house is in the city center. The city center was entirely inhabited by Jews, and it actually felt like Tel Aviv. Gentiles rarely saw it there. And most of them in the center. Beatshags Wilnarges and all these environments. There were only Jews. The Jews there looked completely different. They looked like, much more like Tel Aviv than Bnei Brak. Black clothes, like rabbis and religious people were here, only rabbis wore. Sons and gravediggers. When I was 5 years old or something like that. Anyway, when I went to first grade, we already lived somewhere else. And next to us was a synagogue and yeshiva. Tanchiite Mimim. I became friends with some of these students. They were just like me, there was no difference, they all wore civilian clothes. The only difference was that they always wore a hat. I wore a hat when I wanted to. There was no such thing as Jews with tzitzit outside. I saw this for the first time in Israel. There were no stream or anything like that. Before the First World War, when refugees arrived from Poland, Jews. For the first time we saw Jews in black clothes with Jewish hats. And they seemed very, very different to us. But that's it. Cultural life was highly developed. Even as a child. I knew about all the parties. And on theater institutions, bands, and libraries. The whole city was culture. As they say, the Jerusalem of Lithuania. My brother was a big mountain, born in 23. He was a working youth, a Zionist youth. And was about to ascend to Israel. But it was decided in his party that he should stay to lead the other layer. I later joined him as a child. My sister, on the other hand, was in the religious youth. Her guide. There was Chaim Basuk, who was later the deputy mayor of Tel Aviv. Basuk's brother was a classmate of mine. And so I visited them a lot at home. And I would not have believed then that he would become such an extremist as he was here in Israel. I studied at Ezra School. It was a traditional school. That is, before school there was a public prayer every day. Those who wanted came, those who didn't want it didn't come, didn't go wearing hats. During prayer or during Torah study. And they taught us Hebrew. Hebrew, Yiddish of course. And few of the other languages. Opposite our school was the Esther and Binstein School. My sister studied there. The yard between us was shared. And the breaks were at different times so that the boys would not meet the girls. So the means of communication was right, we were with mirrors make signs to each other. I managed to attend high school from 6 grades. Then war broke out. My sister studied at a Hebrew culture high school. And that was the case until the war. Yes, there were problems of anti-Semitism. There was a very well-known case in Vilna, that there was a large university in Vilna, and there were many Jews there. And there was one day a year some holiday or some memorial day of the anti-Semitic Indian Party. Then there was trouble, they would beat the Jews. One day they fixed them. Gather all the strong, the wagoners, the porters. Dress them up. They always concentrated near the place, where the Jewish theater was. The famous they got appropriate clothes from the theater and went to the university that day as if they were the students and they beat the Poles to death. One was even killed then, and since then the Jews have had peace at the university. We have encountered cases. Since we lived in a really Jewish center. We didn't run into each other every day, but of course there were anti-Semites and they felt it in a way, but it didn't particularly bother us. Personally, I knew that I was there on borrowed time and I would immigrate to Israel at the first opportunity. So it didn't bother me. I was waiting for when it would be possible to immigrate to Israel. My father had a watch shop. On the same street as us, on Vilna Street. Main Street. In '39 when the war broke out. When the Germans attacked Poland. Poland occupied most of it and the part of Vilna was handed over to the Russians. There was anxiety in the city. They were afraid of the Russians, the communists, etc. But actually, when they entered the town and people very hesitantly approached their tanks, they were received very nicely. And in a short time the relationship was very good. We used to laugh at them a bit because somewhat primitive people, for example, their women, the Russians, the soldiers, were in nightgowns going to the theater. They thought it was evening gowns. But it was fine. As for me as a teenager, the Russians built a youth palace, which was something magnificent, and I would say, on a high level. Like today. I mean, there were dozens of courses, of dances, of music, of science classes, sports, everything. And we really felt a freedom that we could never feel before. There was no discrimination. This thing is over once and for all. And we had a good time. After a while there was a change of government. They handed over Vilna, which was the ancient capital of Lithuania, for the Lithuanians. They entered the Lithuanians, and then we were no longer under communist rule at all. Zionism and youth flourished. And I was even Jabotinsky in front of our house one day. How they pushed him there and knocked his hat off his head. No. I was a little kid and I was in front of him, and I wasn't like 50 meters from him or something like that. What I remember is that at that time we studied in a Hebrew school. I'm sorry, I'm repeating something. Regarding schools, I studied at the Ezra School. It was a network school, established by German Jewry. There were many children who attended public schools where the language of instruction was morbid. There were schools of Yiddishists, of Bonnet, and there were very few religious schools. It was usually Talmud Torah. It was considered a low level. In 39, it was in 39, in 41, on June 15th. They arrested my father at night, the Russians. They returned to Wilma. They banned him, and we knew that within a week we were expected to be taken to Siberia and being deported because of his business, etc., etc. Then on June 22, war broke out. The Germans attacked the Russians. Within 2 days the Russians arrived in Vilna, the Germans arrived in Vilna. And the Holocaust began for us. The first meeting was very bad. They started right away. Within a few days, to publish all kinds of prohibitions and orders regarding Jews. To hang signs that it is forbidden to enter the prison and a Jew in the place. A Jew is not allowed to visit cafes, a Jew is not allowed to walk on the guide. If a German comes in front of him he has to get off and clear the place for him. And all in all, I was walking down the street one day, and I didn't see that a German officer was coming behind me. He gave me a huge kick in the butt. It hurt for at least 2 weeks. But the blow didn't decide for me. I was quite a developed child. And at a very young age I read the newspaper every day. So, at 41, I was 12 years old. But I read a daily newspaper from the age of 7 or 8. I even remember one joke that was in the newspaper. If it was about her name, show how a Jew would say to another, "What do you say about this Hitler? Who fights against the Jews and causes them such trouble?" So I tell him, and he thinks we'll listen to him? This week we will fast. I thought about it and smiled. I don't think so smart. But that was the mentality of the Jews. This incident with the German, when I got the kick, hit me very hard. I was reading Freud at the time. I was very interested in psychology, and I looked at everything through psychological glasses. And I thought to myself, first of all, why? In what way is he better than me? The Germans? Did I choose to be a Jew, and he choose to be a German? No. We were born so. It is chance. How does he feel? Beating a small child? I was rather short then. Hit me? What is this? Where is God? What is happening here? Some time passed, and on September 6, 1941, one morning, they picked us up from the houses. Each could take only what he could carry in his hands. And they put us into the ghetto. There were 2 ghettos in Vilna, one was small and one was large. Shortly after they entered Vilna, it began. The action, what happened to him? What we called her, the snatchers. They would snatch Jews off the streets. Poles mostly took a small payment for seizing a Jew and handing him over to the Nazis. Some 10 zloty, and that was not a small sum. And there was my field case, Tovia, he was a right defender at Maccabi by the way. When Maccabi, Tovia, I don't remember his last name, he was also the deputy manager of Bank Bielimovic, which was the largest bank in Lima. He was a defender in the Maccabi football team, which won the championship in Poland that year. Did it in the street. And we were all in the dark about what was going on. A week or 10 days later, 2 detectives brought him home, in civilian clothes. They would have told him to take basic things, a towel, pajamas, soap, etc. and returned him to the prison. By chance we found out that on that day, at the exact same time he returned to the prison, they shot him and killed him on the spot. I then understood what was going on here. When the Germans started our psychological war, and they first of all wanted to keep us insecure, that we will lose confidence, that we will not know what is happening. I mean, here they take a human being, bring him back. Over time, letters would arrive from people who were no longer alive. They would tell people, write a letter. And when we can send, you will add the date and then we will send it. But in fact people received letters and lived in the illusion that these people were alive. After some time the Germans staged what we called a provocation. In the center of the old ghetto from a few hundred years ago, and in the distinctly Jewish area, they claimed a German had been shot at. And they gathered 10,000 people there. And then, they said all of them were put to death. Among them was most of my family. My aunt and my uncle. And those who lived in my grandfather's apartment. And then I realized what happened, because in exactly the same area they established the ghettos. The little ghetto. Because there was a main street between the two. So there was a small ghetto and a large ghetto. In the small ghetto we lived in horrible overcrowding. There were 1, 2, 3 families living in an apartment. And the men were demanded to go to work. Usually earthworks. Fortifications, anti-tank rams, things like that. On the other hand, going to work allowed many people to conduct some trade with the Poles. Some of them managed to get to their apartments and take out some property, if it is not looted. And there was also trade. There were all kinds of objects, both valuables and clothes, selling to the Poles for some food, etc., etc. One day I tried to go to work too. I left, they took me to Porobanek, to the Vilna airport. By it was some field, they told you here. And like everyone else, I picked up some potatoes, I don't remember exactly how, if I bought or not. And I arrived in the ghetto. When I got to the ghetto I saw. When we said, it was like a turn. I saw how you start looking for people and find something with someone. Getting beaten to death. I opened my pants, because we usually were. Here we tie the pants and there we would hold some potatoes. I opened it, threw away the potatoes and decided that I was no longer out of the ghetto. And I didn't go out. The children in the small ghetto did nothing, there was nothing. It was quite a small place, there were 3 blocks, something like that. And they really didn't do anything. We settled on Glacier Street. And we were also in a ground floor apartment, a very, very crowded apartment. A family lived in every room. Little by little I became the house committee there. I kept the records, I handed out the food coupons to everyone. And I managed to outwit the Germans, because I obtained a ration card. For our cat. I registered her as Tzila Katz. One day. Over time, there were also actions that would come and take people out. And these people disappeared, didn't know where they were. In the little ghetto, I think it's just us. Mother, my older brother, Abraham. My sister, Bethia, myself, and I had a little brother, Alex. Other family members, I don't remember, who were in the same ghetto. Although we had, sure. I tried to prepare some hiding place for myself, in case of an action. When they come and take people. I had time. I arranged for me some kind of box with a door that goes up on the boydom, and from there on the roof. I arranged for me so that some tiles were open and I could move there. There came a time when we saw an action beginning. I climbed up and got out onto the roof. There was the feeling that I should have dropped it. I dropped it, I got on the roof, and as I remembered, one plank that held the tiles broke. And I fell in such a way that my hands and my head stayed outside, and my body was inside. What bothered me at that moment was that I was wearing a long coat, and the coat was actually hanging inside the bottom. And I was very afraid. Because I could not get out of it quietly on my own. And already I heard Germans, or Lithuanians, with weapons, with boots, coming up. And I thought that if anyone came near me, I would kick. Then I heard some woman peeing there. Not far from it. Then the German changed direction, I heard by ear. Took her, she argued with him, he took her. And I stayed. This thing affected me terribly. I knew she paid. A miserable woman paid with her life. And I stayed alive. I couldn't blame myself, because I didn't do anything. But I thought it wasn't a miracle. It's a catastrophe. If I need to be saved and someone else pays with their life for it, it's a terrible thing. And every time since then when someone says a miracle happened to me, it didn't happen to me, but it happened to someone else. It upsets me and I say it's horrible. Go. In general, this whole custom of Jews which is a leg turner. And going around congratulating the rewarder for not breaking the other leg irritates me. I curse why I broke my leg. And why wasn't the other leg broken? But it is a deeper matter. It was a much more difficult case. One day I heard that Germans were starting to enter the ghetto with a truck and everything. Then I prepared for me, on the roof I was already afraid, I prepared another place for me, inside the garbage compartment. There was, in this house, it was number 9, if I'm not mistaken. There was a large chamber where they would dump the impact. I thought, in case of anything, I go in there. I'll hide a little under the influence and no one will look for me there. There are more things to remember, not just one more thing. For most of the Klages, I don't know, they were all kinds, there were Lithuanians, there were Germans. Were Latvians. They drank before that. A lot of them were a little drunk, so they weren't that awake, they weren't either. I mean, it was possible to sort them out a bit. I went into this garbage and heard the screams of horrible women. When it quieted down a bit and I didn't hear any more Germans outside or soldiers, I didn't hear their marching, their running, I left. Then a terrible thing became clear to me. that they simply took the babies from the hands of the mothers and threw them into sacks and went with them. Later they said that they threw these sacks from the bridge. I went out. Did you see all this? Not. I was in the Marber. But I saw the mothers and I saw the horror, that was it. Indescribable. I went out into the street. Because the yard was not big, so that we could see the sky well. And I turned to God and said to him, if you have an ounce of strength, stop it right now. And if you don't have, go, don't want to say why. I sent it. It was for me the disconnection from religion. Because I understood that our religion, she is a monotheist. There is one God for Christians, Jews, and Muslims. And I could not under any circumstances accept that the Germans, their symbol was God with us. And God was with them. What they did, they succeeded. And we, what we did, failed. The same God arranges things this way? Not for me. Actually, there was a previous case. The first break for me. In terms of religion, it was before the war. We lived next door. A synagogue and meeting of Tomchiite Mimim. And by us was a large warehouse of a rich Jew named Wyman. A large warehouse of electrical goods, I think, the largest in the city. And I saw that he was coming on Saturday. And on holiday. In his car, parked not far from our house. Enters the synagogue, everyone greets him, receives him with great respect. And he sits in the most honorable place next to the rabbi. What's going on here? I said. Everyone knew that, not just me. That he desecrates Shabbat in persuasion. So is it allowed to ruin Shabbat in the parish because you donate to the synagogue? I don't think so. I said, there is something very rotten here. After a while we were transferred from a second ghetto to a large ghetto. The Great Ghetto was a completely different story. It's just like moving from a city to a village. The Great Ghetto was organized by a regime. There was the head of the ghetto, Jacob Gaines. He was an officer. No, not exactly. Jacob Gaines was in the Lithuanian Regular Army. His wife was a Christian, his daughter. His wife and daughter lived outside the ghetto. And he was the commander of the ghetto. There was a strong police force next to him. They wore clothes similar to the clothes of Israeli policemen. Their commander was Mir Frusht. And most of them were revisionists. Apparently the uniform attracted them. And I would like to point out that one of the plants they did. They assigned 2 or 3 soldiers who set up a kind of youth club for employment. Since in the ghetto there were no cars, no horses, no carts. Stop. You started to tell about the organization in the Great Ghetto. Listen further. The ghetto police organized a very nice enterprise to take care of the youth. There was a youth who wandered the streets and had nothing to do. Then they formed a good group for what they called. That is, to move, if someone had to move objects or goods from one place to another. So there were some handcarts that pushed them by hands. They would take 6 guys and go out and do it. In total there were, I think, about 60 boys. And we sat together, and the guides were policemen. They kept us busy with all kinds of lectures and talks. And it was also mainly to pass the time. And there were shifts before noon that day. These groups go out for transport work. After creation, they are others. From the students or from the boys. There is one still living on the right. His name is Germinsky. Sashki Germinsky. What connection with him? Yes, I had a relationship with him for a long time in Israel. And lately not. He's a bit morbid and all. There were welfare institutions in the ghetto. There were cultural institutions, there were also studies. There were theaters. And there was a philharmonic orchestra. For the first time in my life I was at a concert with a philharmonic orchestra and I heard works by Rimsky-Korsakov, and it really brought life to my eyes. But mainly for the youth was this club established, which was managed by Father Kovner's brother, can't remember his name. And one more poet who was later killed in a car accident after the war. This place was really masterfully organized. Many people would come there and there were dozens of classes. Everyone could choose the activity they were interested in and it really was an outstanding bright spot. An activity that stood out to you? Yes, I've always messed around, a little bit. A in psychology. A little in religious problems. Since this problem bothered me then and still bothers me to some extent. And science innovations. I love it to this day. In addition to that, over the days. So there was a youth like us, me and others too, we were also a little involved in trade. They would sell candy, someone would sell pies. I would usually sell a product that I really liked, chicory. It is a substitute for coffee. And we were a pretty nice bunch, standing on the same street, about 18 people. We weren't competing, everyone had their own product. And we helped a little for a living. Do you have any news about what is happening in the ghetto, except for your city? Yes. Since most people worked outside. And they had contact with both Christians and the police. So basically we knew exactly what was going on. Outside the ghetto. Not. Regarding this there were very different opinions. There were people who wanted to believe that it was not true, and there were others who were convinced that it was true. There were several cases where people escaped from the killing pit. Among them was a friend from my class, whose family was a chapter. He was a painter, and he was always a bit like that in the clouds, as they say. He came and he told me and others that he was very simple. They stood by the pit. They were shot, and he woke up after many hours in the night. And felt that he was alive, with corpses on him. He left and reached the ghetto. He was not believed, because those who did not know him thought he was confused. I knew he was always a bit of a space. Hovered, as an artist. And actually they didn't know exactly. I mean, there were cases where they did know. If, for example, they took the 10,000 in the beginning, then it was clear that they were killed. The Germans also said it was revenge for the shootings at Germans. There was another thing. The Germans, or the Nazis. They would use with Lithuanians, with Ukrainians, with all kinds of thousands, I don't know exactly how. They would come to the ghetto, arrest people. We had such certificates of work in all kinds of colors that were changed every time. As they do today with the people of Gaza. Once it was a blue shin, once it was yellow and everything. But there came a time, later, when the Germans were better than Gantz. From the commander of the ghetto, that he would betray such and such people. Gantz. I managed to get to know Gantz very well and I will tell you about it soon. Gantz. In such cases he would do this thing. He would take patients. Incurable. Prisoners. From a prison. or mentally ill and moral to the Germans. If the German came and said, "I want 200 men or 300 men," and he gave them such men who are basically incapable of anything. So it had to be stupid to realize that they were being hired in Russia, as the Germans tried to convince them. You'll forgive me, but I don't speak chronologically. There was a case, there was the last case. The Germans brought over time, liquidated small ghettos, and brought the Jews from the towns to Vilna. These guys were usually healthy, strong, farmers, really rural, and were outstanding human material. At the beginning of 43, an order was issued that all these, a few thousand, I don't remember how many. We need to move from the Vilna ghetto to the Warsaw ghetto. And then there were more and more rumors that Poner was simply a killing ground, and that was where they took the people. And these people feared that this would happen to them. And they were somewhat prepared. And when they went out to the trains and saw the train turning toward Poner, and not toward Kovna, then they knew exactly what was happening. Most of them had blades, knives. And the moment the cars were opened, they threw themselves on the Germans. They knew they would die. But they managed to finish off several dozen Germans there. And that is one of the examples. That people did not go like sheep to the slaughter. The psychological war that the Germans did to us led to this. That people didn't know what was going on exactly. And I will come back to it. We're coming back. Into the ghetto, into the big ghetto, yes. In the center of the ghetto. In a very central location. Set up a business of goldsmiths and goldsmiths. It was literally the most central place. That is, a street corner, when you come from the gate and move towards the committee's building. Of the Jewish committee, of the ghetto administration, of the police. There was a large corner, a central store. And there they repaired watches and made jewelry, mainly for the Germans. The Germans had a real need for clock repair, and this is one of the things they didn't rate beforehand. A German, when his watch stops or something, he's in trouble. And so the Germans also used it. They asked for Jews. We gave them watches, go buy it. They were paid later and everything. And even the ghetto commander from the Gestapo. He would come and bring watches. This business was run by a man named Grisha Levin. That before the war they had a large warehouse for parts, watches and watch parts. I was close to it because my father was also a watchmaker, and my brother was also a watchmaker. Really managed? Not. But I was very close to it. My brother was a watchmaker, and he was the head watchmaker in that business, let's call it that, yes. And he put me in there as an apprentice boy, since it was more necessary, so he brought me to be an apprentice boy at the goldsmiths. It was a place where in a short time, I was young, and they didn't look at me, I was terribly small. Low. And many did not treat me, but I understood very well what was going on there. It turned out to me that it was actually the nerve center of the underground. Grisha Levin was a revisionist. My brother was from the Zionist youth. Shimon Polavsky, my master, was from Bonnet. We had a secretary, I don't remember her name. Her husband called her Shmulik, with a big mustache. He would come in every day with us, and they were from the communists. The unofficial place of the various groups that were in the ghetto was concentrated there. Gantz, the commander of the ghetto, would go in there several times a week. Speaking, and in my opinion, today I understand it. That it was an informal connection with the underground. To send messages and everything. It happened to me that my master, Shimon, by the way, was Shimon Polavsky until a few years ago, I don't know what day it is, was the head of the Vilna style. It is an institution. Association in New York of Jewish Survivors of Vilna. And he once came to a memorial service at the Vilna house, and I met him and was very happy. One day he told me. In Vilna they called me Polki. He told me, Polki, bring me the cigarettes from my pocket. I put my hand in my pocket and there was a gun. The Germans also came there. I decided at that time that I must study the psychology and mentality of the Germans and take advantage of them. And there I had a pretty good opportunity. Because the head of the Gestapo came there and did business. He actually ordered rings. Or bracelets or things like that, so he was human, so he spoke. I listened carefully to his words. I tried to learn every word. If I didn't know, I asked people who did. And slowly I came to a good German that I mastered today 100%. And this place was run, and I also felt, while there was a fear of. I mean, after that incident, when they murdered these guys from the towns, it was clear that what we thought did not exist. We saw that there were not many chances. Then they started embroidering the plans there. Groups started going out to the forest. And other groups organized themselves into a defense within the ghetto. That is to die in battle and not die. My brother also had a weapon. And there was one case where it was almost clear that the Germans would enter the ghetto and we had to fight. So I know my brother was with Shaneboim, who was killed in the street. Can't remember the name, number 12. He was one of those killed. And we knew that this business was starting to run out. On September 1st, 1943. Were taken, but also voluntarily, a few thousand Jews from Vilna, from the ghetto, and were sent to Estonia to work. I still don't know, I don't remember. How were they convinced to volunteer there? The most was among them. A month later there was another group and we received letters. The biggest, yes, of course. The little one was 6 or so. Are you brother? Yes, of course I did. Letters arrived, and they wrote, exactly describing the situation, and we believed. And it was clear to me at least that the ghetto was going to end. So a month later, on October 1st, I think, when there was another shipment, I joined voluntarily and traveled by train through Latvia. We arrived in Estonia. We arrived at the central camp, at the Bibikini. I met my brother there. And when I was by my brother's side, I had a lot of confidence. My brother had friends there. And what? Mother stayed in the ghetto, and at the end of that month the ghetto was liquidated. My sister was taken to Latvia, to concentration camps, and my mother with my little brother, to Treblinka, for extermination. That the ghetto was liquidated and that all these were taken, it was clear, we knew that, yes? But we actually knew, it wasn't a big secret. Even when we were in Estonia, these rumors reached us. By the way, the same Jerry Shaleben was hanged during the liquidation of the ghetto. He was hanged with 2 others, I think, on the gate of the ghetto, in front of everyone. Because of... In the ghetto? Yes. My father was in Russia, the Russians made him. I want to tell about Estonia. There are some interesting things there. My brother was a very sociable person. And they founded a collective there in Estonia. That is, to live in a commune. They were 7 guys, it was my brother. Abraham Hanin. Was Lipke Orbach. Was playing Frankfurt. Was Shlomo Bilski. And there was one Pepka, whose last name I don't remember. There were 3 girls. There was Genya, who was my brother's girlfriend. Her sister Sima. And there was Sonia, who was Bilski's girlfriend. And they lived as a collective. I mean, what is always achieved together. The girls of course were usually apart in the evening. But during the day and all. Everything was done together. Everyone tried to achieve, to earn, and get food and all together, and divide in all. The biggest earner was the most during the entire period, since he brought the tools with him as a watchman. And wherever they went, we arrived at a place of work, there was a spread of white paper with the tools, and soon the Germans came, started asking to repair watches, and they paid with bread, with some cans of blood, with whatever was available, with a little todek and everything. We went through several camps. There are many stories about the camps and you can hear it from many people. I would like to dwell on the Narva non-Worsha camp in Estonia, which is the second largest city and where we were brought. No, I can't remember dates, but it was about the fourth camp if I'm not mistaken. Before there was Kibioli and all kinds of others. This year is like this? This year was, you can do the math. Yes, I think it was the end of 43. Towards the end of 43. No months. This camp was inside a textile complex. A very large combination of textiles, which as far as I haven't seen it work. But what did work there, and it was good, it was Davide the best. So the blocks we lived in were warm. It was hot there. Outside it was -25, -30, yes? There was also a time when we didn't go to work in the winter, because it was already closer to the pole. The sun would rise at 9, 9:30, and at 12 o'clock it would start to get dark. Go to work an hour in the morning, come back an hour in the afternoon, so there is no time left to work. So there was also a period when they didn't take us out to work. We settled, this collective. I was accepted there as a fifth wheel. I was not their friend. I was young, I was 7 years younger than them. And they got addicted in the best place. It was Block 5. The beds were 3 stories high. We lived on the top 3rd floor. And we were in the corner of the room that bordered the office of the Nazi camp commander. The wall was made of boards with very large cracks. And basically we saw everything and anything that happens in his room. We also saw the vomiting. That people got 25, it was known. They had a special table that they would put their feet in a way. One direction, then when they laid the man down the legs turned. Couldn't move. Hold him and he would get 25 strokes. On the buttocks or on the back with a special whip made of an electrical pipe or something like that. It hurt, it was terrible, it would reach the people's blood, these people would suffer for weeks. And it was a fantastic opportunity for me to learn German. And understand the Germans. I noticed at the very beginning that there are things that irritate them very much. And there are things that are very important to Germans. One of the things was the disruption of the German language. There were Jews who thought that if he said Yiddish and changed it a little, then it was German. And that pissed them off. They saw it as the pollution of the language. Dirt, when a person walked, and there was a lot of mud and all. When a man walked and was dirty with mud, not dirt, Gemma, mud. They didn't look at him like a human being. All kinds of behavior, they told him to go straight and he was smart and moved a little to the side, he was beaten to death. I decided that I would act like a German. I will not classify the language. And there were even cases when I turned to a German and asked him how to pronounce exactly this word. And they told me. Because I did something that suits them. Our clothes were pants, shirt, an outer jacket worn over pants and a long coat. I changed the order. I put the long coat inside the pants, and outside I went with the jacket. I made a symbol of the Vilna Ghetto out of iron wire. And I put it in the hat aside. The symbol was V, learn. On a triangle. It was similar to the Star of David, but not the Star of David. That is, a triangle, with an A on it. Sorry, Tuesday, Friday, Vilna Ghetto, yes? I made this simul for me, it turned out not bad. On the hat, and I was always neat, clean. First of all, I always made sure to be 100% clean. I knew that was the important thing. And in our block were some of Vilna's best actors and entertainers. There was Broida, there were the Shapira brothers. And was quite happy there. Since there wasn't much to do in the evenings, many times we didn't even go to work because of the cold outside. Because the day was so short. And there were their spontaneous performances. And singing in public and everything. I.e. Within this camp there was also cultural life. The food they gave us was manageable. And especially that one of the girls, from the collective, work in a hospital, and the other was in food distribution. So we weren't hungry, to be honest. And most of all, he always profited from his work as a goalkeeper. There were, however, also cases where people committed suicide. Because not everyone could tolerate it. How did you kill yourself? They would hang themselves on a ladder that was outside. There was one strange case that I saw with my own eyes, that a man killed himself lying down in our block. I mean, he's a contact. He tied a rope in the board above him and remained hanging and died. He was found dead inside the camp, inside our block number 5. Hanging. We would go to work. And we worked mainly, we did anti-tank excavations there. It was a lot of work. In general, this place was wonderful, beautiful. It was close, it's very northern. And when they came from the north they did not see a city at all. And since the snow would cover the houses. And on the north side it's not proper, it's a bit hilly like that. That's why in Narva all the doors are on the left side. All the doors open inward, into the apartment and not out, and every house has such a cellar of food. Because their being disconnected is quite normal. After Narva they took us to a camp called Asry. How do you write it exactly? A-S-Y. A-S-R, show. Asry. It was a small labor camp, no, I don't know the dates. Another early 40s in winter. It was winter in Norway. In Norway, yes, it was winter. In this camp there were, I think, a total of 250 Jews. We worked then. It was also a very interesting place. It was a cliff, we worked on the cliff. And the Russian planes passed below us. A cliff by the sea, yes? They couldn't shoot at them. And our job was to cut the field shale. Field shale is stone. If they did it correctly, it would come out as plates, as there are, let's say. Now, these stones, when they reach a temperature of 300 degrees, they are burning. The railways in Estonia all work on this split. But first you have to make a very strong fire, so that it reaches the temperature and then it starts to burn. And it was pretty hard work. Keep us Estonians. Some were communists. And told us, we won't do anything to you, you know. If suddenly, from the camp at unusual hours they will take you to this place. This is the end of you. Decide what to do in such a case. I worked there on the tracks with a Dutchman who was not a prisoner. He was a kind of volunteer. They brought all kinds of people from Europe to show there. His name was Kees Langenfeld. He was at least 2 meters tall. And we'd walk all day on the rail with a hammer. With a few more tools. Check if the rivets of the train are tightened and everything. And we weren't actually on guard, because we were in the free area. Everyone saw us from afar, one big and one small by his side. This man helped me with food. And one day he startled me a lot. After hours of work, I was suddenly called to the gate on the loudspeaker. I was scared. He was at the gate, he says. I came to tell you that the Russians recaptured Vilna. It was a beautiful tomorrow. One day he told me. Who plan in action? Elimination of 10% of the people from the camp. And he told me. Do what you understand. He says, usually, as I've heard, they make more of an effort to find weak people who seem weak to them, because we worked there. I prepared a place for me on that occasion. I put it to her, where? In the territory of the census. And my intention was to stand on the brick to be a little taller. I held my breath. To be red, to have a beautiful face color. And Dr. Botman called him this Nazi who did the selection. Passed by. Stopped and moved on. I survived that time. My brother then worked for the sheriff who was outside the camp commander's camp. He worked for him as a watchman, but he also worked for him as a gardener. He let him arrange the garden around the hut. And there he managed to steal a gun. From one of the Nazis, I don't know from whom. He told me he stole, but he told me from whom. He buried him in the garden. And there will be a sequel to it. When we transferred from there to another camp, Goldfield. It was really very hard work. Work too? Also a labor camp, yes. There they were, building a road in a forest. And since the ground was muddy. So basically they would cut down the trees, cut them and put 2-3 layers of trees as infrastructure. And then they would scatter the stones a little. The gravel and the gravel. He is not taking pictures now. Yes or no? Not taking pictures. He would have walked in on us, sorry. Interview with Rafael Hanin. Interview with Rafael Hanin, October 18, 1995. The third base. Could you tell about your memories of Camp Goldfield? Yes. In Goldfield we built this road in the forest, which was very hard work. Quarrying. Cutting down the trees and carrying them and arranging them. I think there were some horses there that we would have donated. They seal them to trees and carry them away. One day, my brother, again, of course, worked in the camp. It was, by the way, the same camp commander, Paniker, which was also in Narva. He was there repairing watches at his place. Isn't it in the camp? Yes, panic. And my brother developed her name. Basically prepared an escape route. Just in case. It is possible that he prepared it in other places as well, but I know that he definitely prepared it there. This path was like this. There was a small utility house, a field like that, which bordered the fence of the camp. Now, around the fence of the camp was a ditch of water. And in the 4 corners of the camp, at the 4 corners of these trenches, there were watchtowers. He solved a way that by entering through the house use and going down into the canal and crawling inside the canal of the water, it was not very deep. Whoever crawled there was actually out of sight of the guard in the tower. Then he approached the tower, crawling, whoever wanted to Bruce. And from there it was necessary to run openly in an open area, 100, maybe 200 meters. Until he arrived in the forest. In this forest it is already difficult to damage. Well, one day they called us from work, in the middle of work, I think in the morning, and brought us to the camp. It was a bad sign. We thought it was an elimination. And my brother thought so too. I arrived at the camp, he grabbed me and told me, "Listen, we're running away. The way we escape is from this chair house. We opened some kind of bin there, you can easily move to the canal. Crawl up to the guard's corner, under the guard, and run, whoever falls, falls. You decide whether you stay or come with us." I told him, "I'm coming with you. But I have to change my clothes." I was in those striped clothes. Blue and gray. I went upstairs and yelled, "Guys, who has civilian pants?" They threw me 3. I put on my pants, I started running. We lived on the 2nd floor. I started running on all 4s downstairs and then I heard the alarm. Alarm, you can no longer escape. Then 40 guys and 1 girl ran away. My brother is among them. How many of them survived? For example, Lipke Orbach, whom I mentioned earlier, who was later an officer in the Israel Police Department in the Nazi Investigation Department for many years, he died some 2 years ago. And a few more. I haven't heard anything more from my brother. I'm certain within a few percent that what he did was turn to Ashery. It was not a distance who knows what. To the previous camp to take out the gun. And that's it. I heard 2 rumors about him. One was told to me by a guy who I wouldn't define as the most reliable, who saw him at the Red Army Science in Berlin. In the liberation of Berlin. And a Nazi young man. We called him Giraffe, and he was quite friendly. I met him once after a year or so in Dortmargen in Germany. He knew me, I knew him. He turned on water when I went out to arrange some food for myself. In memory of the good old days when he used to compete with us in throwing hands or things like that. And I asked him, "Maybe you know something about my brother?" So he told me. Mount Kivioli on it. In Estonia there was a camp, we were on Mount Kivioli, where there was an exploitation of the splitting of this field, and the dirt, they were with wagons pouring, and a big mountain was literally formed. So he said, if someone died, they would put him there, then it would slowly cover him with the ashes. He told me, that too is not reliable on me. Then, after a short time, he came out, right when that happened, a punk came out. The camp commander gave a very emotional speech that he cares for us. And he does everything for us, and that's how we disappoint him. Their audacity was abnormal. They thought we were stupid. But that's it. From there we were taken on a journey on foot. I think it was 100 kilometers. To Tallinn. And from there the front then approached Riga. The Russians approached Riga. And so they took us by ship to Germany. I remember arriving. This journey was extremely difficult. I don't know. I have no idea. I didn't know if it was day or night. I only know that I slept. I slept part of the way. I slept and walked. I touched someone and left. When we arrived in Tallinn, not far away, Tallinn is the capital city of Estonia, and told us to sit down. So where I was standing there was a big puddle of water. A meter from me was dry, I sat down in the water. I had no strength, another meter. We arrived with the ship to Stutthof, Danzig in Germany. We know, when was it? In year 4? No, at 44. Yes, it was in 44. Sure. It was winter. It was winter, but not a hard winter. So I don't know if it was autumn or what, I don't know. From there, from Danzig, they took us in such ships, in boats, to the Stutthof camp, which was a concentration camp. They put us back in the sand in front of the camp. And each time they took a group to enter inside the camp. When they brought us into the camp, They ordered us to undress, throw all the clothes, all the shoes and everything into the lift. And we stood there naked. At that moment I felt that the Germans were trying to take every human photographer from me. To make us feel that we are not human. And that we will not consider another. That is to say that if we are not human, then they will not treat us like humans, and we may behave like that too. I would at that moment prefer with all my might to die and not stand like that. I think this humiliation was worse than death. I have seen several executions near me. I saw people die. I wasn't as shocked as I was by that. To take the person and make him stand naked in total. It was the height of humiliation for me. I was 15 years old. Then they put us into the 100 yards. And their people shaved us in intimate places. The days, yes, and the women were shaved by men. That's what they did. So that we feel that we are not human. It was online. From the beginning there was a psychological war against us. I was stunned. We bathed. Then everyone was thrown, we had to come, and clothes were thrown to everyone. I got a coat made of English fabric, a jacket. Very fine English cloth, with a large, red cross on the back, so that he would not be a civilian. It was bigger than me by maybe 10 numbers. I got a pair of shoes that I could put one foot in, yes? A couple came in, if I don't remember anymore. And they loaded us. We were there inside the camp for some 2 months or 6 weeks, I don't know. Most of the day we would sit on the ground. They would give us 2 or 3 times a day, but they kept us all day. We didn't do anything simple, sit down. Sit like idiots, that's what they wanted. From there they transferred us to the Dortmurgen camp. Dortmurgen is in southern Germany. It was the most horrible camp I've been through. Actually, it was a labor camp, so to speak. In Estonia, maybe thanks to my brother and all. I didn't like. I wasn't hungry. Now, before we started registering us, I registered myself as Bilski. My number was 73. Bilski was not one, Bilski was this friend, a member of the collective. And he's the only one left with me. He was a healthy guy, he was a coachman before the war, he was a freight carrier or something like that. His number was 73 to 72, my number was 73 to 73. And so I went in. Dortmurgen. They brought us to a train station and from there we walked into the camp. On both sides of the road. There were fruit trees, wood trees, apples. A lot fell on the ground, we were hungry. The food at Stutthof was 0. And there were some people who jumped to take an apple, killed them on the spot. We entered the camp, there was terrible mud. We were literally rooted in the mud. The camp was full of gypsies. With Hungarians, with all kinds of nations. We were put in with the Russian prisoners who were considered the most inferior only to the Jews. Block 3, that was the last block. Terrible density. Bunk beds. And that's it. In the evening, they shared soup. The soup there was actually a thick soup, what do you call it? Yes. There were pieces of meat. There were potatoes, sometimes it wasn't bad. And as I stand and eat the plate of soup, someone puts a spoon in my backside and takes out a potato that was inside. Rossi, what will I do with him? Twice as tall as me. I put the plate on the ground, I sat on top of it with ease and ate like that. And so I continued every time I was in danger. Someone steal from my plate. In this camp, the food we got was food to die for. It was impossible to live on it under any circumstances. In the morning they handed out a drink, it should have been tea. It was just violent. They cooked them, and that's it. People were pushed to accept it, and there were also many who were pushed to accept those leaves that are left. After trying once, I said, "It's not worth dying for," and I gave it up. We would go out therefore. We left for work without food. When we got back, they would give us a cube of margarine, okay? A loaf of bread, it was such a square loaf, square loaves, what a slice, I estimate 200 grams. And she is a plate of soup. Only. It was impossible to survive on this food for more than a month, 6 weeks. And there was hard work, and cold, which begets energy. They then also made bridges for mites inside the camp so as not to walk in the mud. And all those who have weakened. They got stomach diseases and could no longer eat the food. Put them in a shack, call it Shannon's block. There they were stripped. And if a chemical pharaoh were to write his number on his chest, when he died, it would be easy to write down. And they would walk there completely naked, they would hold them until they were dead, or they would collect them and send them to finish them off in a barn or someplace. I saw that it doesn't work there. I tried a few things. First of all, I developed a method that worked very well. Every time they demanded in the morning commander, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, all kinds of professionals. They would say 5 professionals of this or that, 1 step ahead. I was always volatile. They would take me. I would arrive there, my German did not see, dressed nicely. Relatively clean. I would take off my hat, go to my life and say to my Lord, "I regret to inform you that I was sent to Ana by mistake. I am not a professional. But by the end of the day, I'll sort it out for you in the meantime. If you want, I can help you translate a bit, if you want. I'm not guilty. You can't bring me back to camp, but if you can, please. Very sorry." At the end of the day, I worked like a demon. And not a single case happened that at the end of the day I asked to come tomorrow or not. Everyone told me, "Come tomorrow." I started to be a kind of his assistant. First of all, in terms of language, to explain. He told people to straighten, they didn't understand what it was, I showed them how. Or I would work alone, I would say, "I will do it, yes." And I would work one day extremely hard. And that way I was better. Because they valued a person who was a little to their liking. They helped me with food usually. For example, they let me cook water for people, for there were people, they didn't have anything to eat. So they even preferred that water be boiled, and in the water there was red salt. I mean, industrial, so that they don't use it for food. So he was red. So people would ask to boil water for them with a little salt, or sometimes they would have some crumbs. Or a potato peel, or something, I would do that. And that was something. After some time, Bilski, who was a very healthy guy, really healthy. Join, look for those strong ones there. And put together a group whose task was to dismantle the heavy equipment. Machinery. For the factory that everyone, most of us worked. He added me to this group. As a child, you need someone to bring water. That have to be lifted with cranes, bring a board or something like that, these things I did. And actually there were 22 of us. With a German expert porter from the port of Berment and a Jewish slave, a dog. And there I worked and there I developed a method of how to do it. The train would arrive outside the camp, would travel slowly. I was busy and many times there were machines that were based on 2 principles. One machine on 2 principles. As soon as they finished dismantling, I would jump under the train, caught between the irons. And the train went slowly. After a kilometer or so there was a small village. I would drop myself, check first that I will knock myself down and nothing will happen to me. And there I would get into the main thing, so I had a Russian coat. Russian long military coat. I would knock on the door and say, I'm Rusky. Working here on the road, I'm hungry, do you have anything to eat? The peasants always gave something. At worst they said, we have none. Then I would say, so I cannot even have a few of the potatoes meant for the pigs? Pigs would get the tiny potatoes. Or I would ask them for an apple. Apples. Because apples and onions were the cheapest basil there. There was no money for apples at all, because there were fruit trees on the side of all the roads. With these apples I would sell or give to those who could no longer make bread. Apple, tree and onion, it was a commodity. Then I would get bread. Now, when I would return with some shelter, some food, some bread, tear apples, I would half hide very close to where we worked. Because I knew that every time I ran away, the capo saw what I was doing. He would take half of me. So he took half from me, but the other half was hidden from me, yes? It worked. Until one day they had to pick up something. Such a branch. That is, a rail that divides into two. The guys picked up and didn't succeed. Each time one side succeeded, the other side failed. So the German said, you are 22, let's divide you into two, 11 here, 11 here. Then he saw that there are 11 and there are 10, I wasn't. They gave an alarm, and I was in the village was not far. I heard the alarm, so I knew it was the end. There was a standing order, if someone was caught outside the camp or outside of work, they would be shot on the spot. I didn't care that much. And 2 soldiers came. I tried to knock on the door. Of Germany. He heard the alarm, he said, can't let you in, they caught me. There was an argument between them. One said, listen, this is an Arab village. We can't kill him here, we'll take him out of the village. No, a village, sorry, a German village. They were 2. Now, I walked then with boots. With wooden soles. And on wooden soles the snow accumulates and turns, hindering walking, it starts to be cross-round. So each time I stopped and knocked with the shoe to get it off. They rushed me. I laughed at them, I said, and if I don't, what will you do to me? Kill me. They will kill me. And I said to them, how does it feel? I missed them. I told them, tell me, how will you feel at home with your children if you see that you killed a boy like you? Shut up and go, I said, and if I don't shut up, what will you do to me? Can you do more than kill me? Not. And then, as we walk, one says, here is there. Some stones were on the side, he says, let's do it here. Okay. Suddenly a Volkswagen arrived. I heard he drives very fast. There was an overcoat there, it's like a military thing. I mean, maybe engineering, you can call it. They would walk in green clothes. With a red ribbon, with a cross. And out of this car came an officer named Schneider, whom I knew well, because he was also in charge of us in Estonia. And he got away with it. I think he ran fast to save me. He was human. He was a person who, in my opinion, wanted to save me, or any other Jew. And so he arrived quickly. What's going on here? So they tell him, he ran away. So I said to him, Mr. Schneider, do you remember that I worked for you in Narva? I worked for you in the goldfields, I worked for you in Narva, I never ran away. Because from that food they could subsist. You can't make a living here. I told him, you give horses food to live, we don't. You will shut up. He took out the gun. Gave me a blow with the gun, and I knew I had done well. He brought me to the capo of a job. I mean, we belonged to a work group, a work company. At the head of this company was a German, a prisoner. That he was a communist. And it was already close to the end of the war. So he says, wait outside. Then he comes out to me and says, beautiful boy. He says, the war means work. Too bad, he says, for your camp tradition, let me think of something. He comes to me and says, listen. Go put a blanket on your back and on your back. I'll give you some punches. And I can report that I received your rapist. Do it. He came to the camp and announced that I tried to run away to collect food. And he punished me. And they told me, you are no longer allowed to leave the camp. If you leave the camp, woe betide you. There was such a thing, what they called in the Rotfunket camp. People named to them a red patch, and these were the ones who were not allowed to leave the camp. For some reason, I don't know why, maybe he said some word. They didn't put that red patch on me. But I could no longer leave the camp. And then I knew it was the end. And I decided I didn't want to die. I don't care about hunger, I don't care about bullets. There was also a case before that we worked inside the large camp which was surrounded very closely, that is, there were guards every 50 meters or something like that. And as I walk, I see that there is one of them, it is the same son of the villager with whom we used to rent a dacha every year. I mean, he knew me, we played, he was a year older than me. So I say to him, hey, what's up? So he says, yes, fine. I told him, listen, I have a request for you. I said, I'll start running, hit me in the head with a bullet. He says, bullet to the head for you? Not. Do you want to die? He says, yes, I am ready to kill you. I stood there for, I think, half an hour. And I cursed him. And I deserved an award for the curses I invented at that moment. I cursed him until about 15 or 20 generations back. And he changed colors and was silent like a dog. I was in the camp as one who was not allowed to leave. The staff of the camp knew that I was not allowed to go out. So for example on Shabbat, when they didn't work, they told me, come, there is. It's dead water, you'll move it here, yes? The car came to pick up the patients from the hospital who could no longer stand. So they would take the box of bread. They are put back inside and brought to the elevator. This box had 4 handles. When I walked with the handle, then I could only hold it like that because I was short. So they told me, you will get on the car and you will fix them. So I arranged them inside each other, yes? And when it was full, I took off my hat and told her, German is full. So he gave me a blow, he says, what's there, 1 layer, and what will happen with Tessamut? This is the work I did there. In the meantime I learned from Russians, captives, they were with us, and we were generally on good terms with us. They taught me what herbs to eat. And I would search under the snow, moving the snow and finding these grasses, and it was edible. But this solution must not have been. I thought, what do we do? And one day it occurred to me. I did another stupid thing, not stupid, I don't know. It was cold outside. And I decided, I made a stick for me, I was in the camp all day, I didn't go out, I found some stick, and I put a nail on top of it. I stayed out all night. Because the guards were the rousers of the camp and they guarded us. I couldn't leave the camp at night and come in, so I stayed outside. And from a window I stole a shirt with that stick, and then I sold it to one who works in the kitchen. I received a stress dose. Then I planned a very complicated operation of stealing soup. The soup would be brought to us from. We were the 3rd block. I mean, the first was the kitchen, then there were more. We were the last. The food would be brought in very good German military thermoses. From 50 liters each. So I arranged with 2 of my friends that they would volunteer and take 1 pot, that is, 1 thermos. And right at the corner, when they pass the corner of 1 building, they will move bit by bit and open the property. I waited there with the hat, and I filled the hat with soup. The soup was thick. And the 3 of us ate. Everyone had a bowl on their belt, in which there was food. But anyone who walked around while food was being distributed with such a bowl outside could have been beaten to death. That's why the hat served me. We ate. In fact, it was so dangerous that we never repeated this exercise again. And I was looking for something else to do. My friend, Abraham Weiler, he lives in Manchester today. I visited him many times, he visited me. He worked in the same hut where the Muslims were kept. And I thought he could help me. Because they could not make bread, they could not eat. And they just backed up, were found there and backed up. But their block also got food. Then I turned to him 2 or 3 times. I came to him and said, Abraham, I'm dying to eat. And he helped me. What is found? Abraham Hanin, October 18, 1995. Erudite money. Did you tell how Abraham Waller saved you and gave you food? He was actually able to give me food every day. Because there were a lot of people there and they weren't able to eat. But in the atmosphere that was there, I did not dare to come to him often. Because the very hope, the very possibility that I have another option, that I always have one more option. It was more important to me than the food itself. That's why I was only at his place maybe 2 or 3 times. But I knew when I came I would get another time. I wasn't on the verge of despair, I had something else before that. And this was a very, very important point. There was a case in the camp. There was a sergeant major there. A wonderful person. That he collected 7 boys like me. We were all more or less the same age. Maybe you remember it? I forgot, I knew his name, I knew his wife, I knew his son. And he gathered 7 boys like me and simple. Do everything to help us. He took us every morning quite a serious walk to get to the town. To the commander's car and push it to refuel. Then he would raise a little eye like this until he gave us the option to enter a house and ask for something to eat. Then he arranged for us to work under cover. I mean, we had buckets of lime with leaf mats. And we were at the train station, and every train that passed by we would spray on it to make it look like snow. Then he found some shed, it was all his initiative, it was not planned. He found some nets and brought some pieces of cloth and we would tie them and make like camouflage to camouflage tanks or cars and all. And this group of 7 people, we were close-knit. There was one day of very bad weather, it was raining endlessly. And in the morning they took us out early, placed us in the sand. And start with the morning exercise with kneeling, and when taking off the hat, put the hat on. Hours, and the sky was gloomy. We were soaked to the bone. And as if by command, at a certain moment people stopped obeying. We gave an order to take off a hat or get off a frog seat, they didn't do it. Without command. It's really amazing. Such a thing did not happen, and then a commander came out and once again started preaching to us, what are you doing? We give you work and we give you clothing and food and you behave like this. And then he said, you must be cold, so see who is very cold, we will organize within a few days a delivery to Dachau, and there are very large stoves, you can warm up there, anyone who wants can join. I was convinced that it was the end, that it was death. My 6 friends went out. I'm the only one left, I said, ready to sell my soul to the devil. And actually, I made a kind of agreement in my heart with the devil. Let me see the end of Hitler, the next day do what you want with me. Kill me, make meatballs out of me, keep me in a cage, for the rest of my life I don't care. I must see the end of Hitler and my regime. There was another case where I slept with my friend, Mandel Zakov, he was called. We slept together to cover ourselves with the 2 blankets together, so that we would be warmer. One night I was suddenly cold, and I turn around and Mandel is dead. Dead, cold. I took his belt, there was no belt on the pants. I turned and advanced towards his feet. And in the morning we took him out to the commander, as we used to find all those who died during the night. It was among the healthy, not among the sick. It was usually between 2 and 6 every morning. And the Germans demanded that we take them out to the census so that they could be counted together. When it was the foreign Rosh Hashanah of 1945, decided that an enlightened German should clean us up. We need to be moved. Disinfection and baths. And indeed they took us to a suitable place. Stripped us naked. We went in, took a bath. Then we gave everyone 1 growth. Wait until the clothes come out of the disinfection. It was cold outside, I think, at least -15. And I think at least half of the people didn't make it, died from it. I don't know how, I stayed alive. I was strong, I had tremendous willpower. And she stays. Time passed and I saw that I needed a living. It was simply impossible to live from art, it was an impossible thing. Then I made a plan. And luckily my plan worked. As I said, I was always very neat, very clean, very beautiful. I sat down on the ground in a place, on the path, close to the path, where the cooks would leave at the end of work, from the kitchen to their hut. I sat. What are you doing here? Nothing, I'm sitting. And little by little I wanted to get them used to my presence. One day, one came, I saw his shoes were dirty. I told him, let me, I need to succeed in your shoes, why are you going like that? He asks me, why? What do you want me to pay you? And I said, I don't want anything. I sit like a puppet, I have nothing to do. I will do it for you. Well, I polished his shoes. I was sure he was waiting for me to ask him for something. I didn't ask for anything. I continued to sit there, I would tell them, hello already. Little by little they got used to me, until one day what I wanted happened. He is the refugee, one of them, the cook. The refugee, oh, hell, I have nothing left. This is what I was waiting for. I told him, give me a piece of bread, I'll go get you bread. Sorry, I have a story before, I will come back to this story. It's a shame to destroy this story. Outstanding employees would receive vouchers for the canteen. And in exchange for a ticket in the canteen you would get a few cigarettes or some tobacco. I would speak German and everything. I received several times. I had some cigarettes. And I would rent. I would buy a dish. For a portion of soup and a cigarette. Sells her a cigarette, but takes out a potato first. So I already had something. Or buys a loaf of bread, cuts off 2 millimeters from it and sells it on. And one day a disaster happened to me that it was stolen from me. I woke up in the morning and there was no tobacco, no cigarettes. Then I started with this story with the kitchen. When he told me, when he ejected. That has no virtue, that does not exist. And I offered him to give me a portion of bread and I'll go get it for him. I did it, and slowly became his messenger. To replace the things, the groceries he steals from the kitchen. What could be achieved? Sometimes a shirt is good for someone, there was some gold jewelry or something. A gold ring or something like that. And so I came to the liberation of the camp. that I have at least 2 whole loaves of bread, which were cut lengthwise, tied to the feet, and 2 small jars of vegetable fat. Towards the end of the war, when the front was approaching and in our rear were the French, they began to lead us on foot in a direction far from the road. From the front, we went several nights, stayed in all kinds of places. In one place we also heard of a visit between the Nazis. Yes, burn us or no burn us. And there were those who said it was a shame to do it, soon we would be prisoners and they would pay us for it. And we really arrived one day. We walked on the road. I always raved about being in the second front row. I found it to be the best, safest place. Because those who walk behind, there are all kinds of obstacles that people stop after, have to run. But if you go in the first row, you walk all the time at one pace and that's fine. I also heard, I was interested to hear what the Germans were talking to each other, the commander usually came to mind. And I heard that a German passed by on a bicycle, and the commander asked him, "Where is the front?" So he said, "Behind you, 10 kilometers, the French are already there." Then he gave an order to all the soldiers. "Form a column on the right." He gave them the order, right face. And they left us standing on the road. That it is a moment less or momentary, yes, clear. The moment was not dramatic, but it was expected. We knew that the end of the war was called, we knew what was happening. We found pieces of newspapers here and there, and we knew what was going on, and the Russians were there too. We knew what was going on. We were not completely in the dark in this respect. And then I started running to the left side, because I saw a farm there, in the distance. I brought with me 2 boys who were a little younger than me. We arrived at the farm there, we hid in the dumpster, we were afraid to come out. And small stories that are not so important. But that, in fact, was the point of liberation. We arrived 2 days later, there were 3 German air defense men who approached me. We went in to eat at the farmer's, he invited us to his dining room and we ate. And they heard me speak German, turned to me. "When we take them captive, I will take them captive." I told them, "I don't have the strength to carry your rifle. Give me the bolts of the rifle. Then we can go with you." So they grew a lot. We took the bolts of the rifles and went with them to a small town, and there, of course, at the entrance to the town there were already Frenchmen, they were banned and we got rid of them. It has passed. In this town, I don't remember exactly its name. I just didn't want to be there. In damn Germany, I looked around, and they told me that the Swiss border is 80 to 100 kilometers away. I took these 2 guys, the young men, and we started walking. After a few days we got there, to Constance, which is a border city with Switzerland. We hoped to cross the border, but it became clear to us that the Swiss would not let us pass under any circumstances. I stayed there for about 2 months. Until I met an Israeli soldier from the Jewish brigade. I was riding down the street on a bicycle and saw an English soldier with a Star of David on his sleeve. It seemed strange to me. I circled past him once more, to see the Star of David better. The 3rd time I did it, he noticed I was looking at him. And then I said to him, "Amcha?" He said to me, "Amcha." Then I asked him, "Who are you?" He said, "I am a soldier from the land of Israel." So I said, "Let us speak Hebrew." In Hebrew. Yiddish. The first words in Yiddish, and afterwards in Hebrew. May you know Hebrew? I knew Hebrew from home, from school. And after a few days, by very beautiful exercises, I managed to cross the border between the French zone and the American zone with him. There we met again 3 soldiers, 3 sergeants, who had returned from the Jewish brigade, whose role was, on behalf of the defense, probably to eliminate Nazis in the Berlin area. And with some adventures we arrived in Italy. And it was so that I was in Germany no more than 2 months after the war. In Italy we were in camp, and we waited until we got to Israel with almost elephants. We sailed from Italy on the 23rd of December, 1945, and reached the country on the 3rd of January, 1946. Commencement of work and rehabilitation. Did you meet your wife, Sarah? In a kibbutz. And how old were you when you arrived in Israel? I was 3 months short of 17. How did you arrive, in what way? I arrived on the Ein Sarani ship. That was also the story. We were in Montantala, the miners' camp. We're there, so that they don't come near us. Name our own guards. And we were taught the word mulatto, sick. And so the Italians did not dare to approach us. One day army trucks came of the Jewish brigade. They took us to the port of Aspecia. And there we saw a small ship standing. We asked what it was, so they told us, if this ship comes to the ship. We didn't know that this was the ship with which we had to arrive in Israel. There were 915 of us on board this ship. There were 10 floors of Russells. I received no cesarean section. There is no Caesar. There is no Caesar. Anyway. I was on the 2nd floor, in the 2nd arcade. And my measure was that with my nose I could touch the arch above me. Of course, a day later we realized that this is the ship, that we are not traveling, we will not be, but this is the ship, that we need to reach Israel. And people started vomiting, and the smells there were terrible. I decided I wasn't there. I came on board. And I volunteered to work. Food distribution, water distribution. Until we got near the land. "11 days. Very intelligent people. They didn't give us food, but they would give us 2, 3 times a day, a piece of chocolate. Otherwise people would sustain even more permanently. And so, when we were close to Israel, an English plane discovered us. British movers boarded the ship, and I must say they were exemplary gentlemen. So they just broke into the food warehouse. It turned out that there was a lot of canned food in there. Because the intention was to drop us off at the beach, drive, and pick up soon. Another group of people. We gave them endless cans of sardines. They didn't react, didn't resist. They had complete understanding. We arrived at night, parked in front of Haifa. Everyone ate too much of all the food in the warehouses, and the spectacle was surreal, unbelievable. All the people sat around the ship and defecated into the sea. Everybody. They had problems. We were fascinated to see the Carmel. And the next day he started dropping us off on buses. There were tables. Women from the Organization of Working Mothers. And one gave chocolate, the second brushed her teeth, the third was busy. I didn't understand. What are they giving me? What do they owe me? We can't understand that some people would say something to someone else. Because he is human. We arrived at Idlit. Then the British Foreign Secretary decided to give 1,500 certificates per month to the Jews for the Israel Convention. We were the first to be released in this arrangement. After 3 weeks, my uncle came with a car in 1946 to receive me and took me to his home. He was Eliezer Perry, so he was called Perelson. He was acting mayor of Tel Aviv at the time. And I saw another life. I still decided to go to the kibbutz. I also went to kibbutz Ramat HaKovation, the youth aliyah. But before that I was another 2 weeks. My Aunt Rachel from Matsu the elite insisted on this. I'm with them first. And then I went to the kibbutz. And there I also met Sarah. She arrived by ship several months before. As a Gaelic immigration for the children that the English allowed to come to Israel. She herself is also an Auschwitz survivor. I have to point out that kibbutz Ramat Kobush received us in an extraordinary way. They had a full understanding of what happened to us and let us break up. I was a wild girl. I'm like a dog that lets go of a rope, that's how I was. I worked for at least 2. But I was very naughty. And they let us have it. And I think only thanks to that. I don't really have any explanations today. We all were. We were all Holocaust survivors, none of them were from Vilna. Because from my class, from school, as far as I know, there are 2 left. 3. One will be accepted in America, somewhere. And one more guy is sleeping in Holon. I met him once. But he is. It was a guy who used to go to school with me every morning. He would pass by our house, waiting for me, we would go and come back. He didn't remember me. This entire period was erased from him. This is a clear example of how a person knows how to suppress unpleasant things. But not everyone can do it. Just 2 years ago, I knew then that I had nothing to look for. I'm in Italy. I once traveled by train and saw again some officer traveling with a Star of David. I asked him, "What is it, a Jew?" He told me, yes, he spoke a little German. Told me he was the chief rabbi of South Africa. And I asked him what city he was from. He told me he was from Kipton. I told him that I have an aunt, Tiba Siegel, in Johannesburg. He told me, "What I can do for you, give me your address." I was then in Kibbutz Kraniego, near Venice. He told me, "All I can do for you is to advertise in a Yiddish newspaper in Johannesburg that you are looking for her." My aunt told me that she received 20 phone calls looking for her. And I received a letter from her with some sterling. And she informed me that my sister and my father live and are in Berlin, her home. And my father, who returned from Russia. There was also an interesting story with my father. My father is a native of Tula. Tula is a city in Russia, 100 kilometers east of Moscow, which was known in the world in their samovar and gun industry. He had the right to sit in Moscow, unlike most Jews. And so he was afraid that the Russians would arrest him. And so he began to wander from city to city. When he arrived in Vilna in 1920, in Pilsaki, the Polish dictator captured Vilna. He remained stuck as a refugee, a real refugee, and we didn't actually have any contact with any of his family. Only him we knew. He was not religious, but what does a Jew do when he arrives in a foreign city? He goes to the synagogue. So he stumbled upon the synagogue of the carpenters that my grandfather built. My grandfather must have invited him home, as is customary. And Klut was not without a name in the house, there were 9. So he got married. And that was his story. So in Russia there was a very, very accidental thing. Statistically speaking, He met 3 children of his sister who died in Siberia. And while he was in Siberia, he actually raised them. 3 children of his sister in Great Russia, to meet. Something amazing, unbelievable. But still, as soon as he had the option as a Polish citizen to leave Russia, he left. And met my sister. We visited Vilna 2 years ago. With father in Israel. In the country. Yes. My aunt suggested I go to South Africa. Later I visited her, she offered me a house there, which would be mine and everything. I told her. I have learned my lesson all my life. I live in Israel and I will die in Israel. I have nothing to look for there. I came to Israel. As I said, in the kibbutz, then we got married, we have 2. We got married in 48 during the Great Recession. We were both soldiers, we received money from the army in the DNA drawer. We have 3 sons with 7 grandchildren. And there is another option for 1 or 2 as one who does not have children yet. Yes, I always told, but never in large portions, but an episode each time. And many episodes they know, but they have never heard the whole story. Who did you deal with here? I was in the metal industry. Later I was a member of the elevator cooperative. My father brought me machines from Russia, from Germany, I asked. And it allowed me to be a member of the cooperative, then I had my own workshop. And then I became a professional instructor and teacher for adults. I've been doing this for 7 years. And it was interesting to me. I built curricula. In the 7th year I arrived, every time I would raise the level, and in the 7th year I saw that it wasn't working anymore. If I raise my level, they don't understand me. Then I had the opportunity to move, someone suggested I move into the business world. I worked for 12 years in the company, as a department manager, I developed a business there. Import machinery. Then I became myself from 1977. You told here, Rafael, a story of survival that involved in part the fact that you were lucky and were young and healthy. And in part you showed a lot of resourcefulness, moment by moment. What can you say today to your children, your grandchildren, and all future generations? What lesson did you take with you? I am an atheist. But there are some things. The best in turn. I try to comply. In the Torah it is written, do not do to your friend what is not good for you. Therefore never. Not darken I will not cause injustice to someone just because he is different and just because he is in a weaker position than him. For me a sacred thing can only be what is sacred to all humans. For all humanity and not for a part of humanity. Therefore in my knowledge there is only one holy thing. Human life. No symbol and no stories. In my opinion, the established religions. The Vatican. The rabbinate. The law. This is the disaster that brings. For all the wars and all the suffering. If in Israel, a Sephardic rabbi cannot serve an Ashkenazi community, what do we demand from the Gentiles? Why would they tolerate us? And so I think. Every Jew who considers himself a Jew must live in Israel. Because this is our place so that we become a normal people. And if you were to ask me another question, what is my wildest dream? I would like to visit as a tourist. Thank you very much. 50 years after peace. And to see what has become of us. I want to say as well that I belong to the most remarkable generation in the whole history of Israel. I lived through the Holocaust, I took part in the founding of the state, and soon I will see peace as well. Thank you, Rafi, for the difficult account we have heard from you. And to express my appreciation for this act and my recognition, how important it is that you told to the best of your memory so that it remains. Thank you very much. Thank you too. I think it is a blessed enterprise. And I waited for it. October 18, 1995. Cassette 5. This is a newspaper published in Germany. And in it an article about the testimony. I also gave on August 12, 1965 about 2 murder cases of hanging 6 people with a stone escaping from the camp. They were Russian prisoners. And an exodus of 22 people. That I was in close proximity to them at the time of the release. Who they are, what they are, we do not know. We know they were prisoners in a German prison. This is a family photo taken in Vilna in 1940. We will go from the left side. My mother is holding my little brother Alex. Beside her, her sister Bathsheba, and below her, her daughter Rivka. They perished in the first action in the ghetto. Beside them my sister, and my father with a beard, in mourning for his own father. Below him, Aunt Devorah, my mother's elder sister, and below her my grandmother. To the right of my grandmother is myself, at 11 years old. My cousin Shuka Epstein, who perished in the ghetto. Below him my uncle Boris, who perished in the first action. And below him, Aunt Nikama, who lived in Lithuania and perished in Lithuania. It's a big picture. This is a photo my father took right after the war in Berlin. After he returned from Cebu. No, it's not good here. This is my father's sister, Professor Ginwald. There was a well-known pediatrician in Leningrad. This photo was taken in Tel Aviv in 1954. On the left side, Aunt Moshe Perlman. Lida, my mother's cousin. Berlin friend Panna Halperin. Next to her, my aunt, my sister, Rachel, Avital, lived in the elite council. Lida is the daughter-in-law of my cousin, who is on the right, Bernard, and between them his mother, born in Blin, Berta. A couple is sitting below. Old parents. My grandmother's sister. This is the only photograph I have of my elder brother Abraham, standing on the right. Next to him stands the young aunt, my mother's sister who was 7 years old with her daughter Rivka. And on the left side stands the heart of the son. Cousin. Son of David the Comforter. In the uniform of the Lithuanian army in 1940, when the army was stationed in Vilna. This is the first photo after the war. About 2 months after the release. This is my first photo in Israel. Actually, before the establishment of the state, for the purpose of an identity card. Photo from 1960 for acceptance. Citizenship certificate. This family photo is of my father's family at the Grandparents' Center. Father's brothers and brothers-in-law are around. My father was actually in Vilna and had nothing to do with Russia, so the family put him in a photo montage. And the other is standing on the left. This is a picture of me and Sarah shortly before we got married. 1009. I am glad that we are all here together, the whole family. Although 2 grandchildren are missing. One in the army, Erez, and his sister Lamore. A fine young woman, who evidently has very important matters to attend to. In spite of our enemies, we have managed to build, almost from the dust, a family to be proud of.